So I hope everyone had a good rest, a good meal. Again, lots of sleepiness, which is natural. And just keep trying to awaken the mind. You can't really force that. Um, I do like with sleepiness, I find a more vigorous posture, opening the chest and pushing the hara forward. So you extend the back. That helps a lot. And then if you're really sleepy, kind of getting at the edge of the chair. So obviously, if you're doing this is getting sleepy and your head's down, you're not getting much oxygen. You're choking off. So it's not really good to meditate like that. So you get your head up. If you're opening your chest and you're pushing your hara forward, then when sleepiness starts to manifest, you've got the posture to work with and indicate what's going on. I think that the principle of the hindrances that we have to meditation is that you have enough presence of mind to notice the hindrance arising. So the hindrance of dullness, what happens is we fall into it, we don't notice it arising. We're just down for the count. So you basically have to stop meditating. Whatever you're doing, don't do it. If you're doing anapanasati, don't do it because it's putting you to sleep. And the tendency is to kind of just keep doing anapanasati because it's comfortable. For some reason, it's too comfortable. So you have to make yourself, I guess, uncomfortable. So you basically have to stop meditating and look around and wake up. And it's obvious. It's very obvious. So once you know you're here, then you've got enough presence of mind to perhaps notice the arising of dullness. If you can see the arising of dullness, you have some chance of not buying into it. Logical, simple enough. And how do you not buy into it? You learn about the body's posture vis-a-vis sleepiness and non-sleepiness. When there's non-sleepiness, you have an open chest, your neck's up, you you know what's going on. And when you're sleepy, your chin's down, your body's slumped. So how can you see that first slumping of the posture manifest in your body? If you can notice that, then you can, oh, okay, can't go there. And that's not negotiable. You can't go there. Some people, oh, I can go there. I'm okay. So you have to be kind of strict to yourself. No, it's a kind of like a discipline that, don't do that. Don't go there. Don't go. Just come back until that dullness, the nature of dullness passes away. So sometimes dullness is just a thing that isn't a big deal and you can work through. Sometimes you just got to go back to your kuti and go to sleep. That I don't know. You have to figure that one out. I used to I used to try to push through sleepiness after lunch as a young monk, young, long ago. Uh, and then I found that I could try to push myself, say, for maybe 3 hours, pushing. And yet if I took a half-hour nap, I was fresh and I could meditate much better. So the idea of just pushing through something is not necessarily intelligent. It's just a position you take. You have to push through. So you do have to experiment, but you do have to know that you're actually dull. So I know in monastic circles that sometimes monks become chronically dull. They just, as soon as they sit down, it's gone. And then they need to kind of be told by a teacher or whatever, you're not aware. You're really not there. And sometimes they'll get defensive. They say, no, my samadhi's really good. But they're just dreaming. So if you think you're getting dull, ask your partner or your friend, can you just check my posture this retreat? Just check it out. What do I look like? Do I look like I'm meditating? Or am I just down for the count? And if your partner says you're down for the count and you feel defensive, you're down for the count for sure. So then when you come into a meditation, usually usually it's like a time of day that quite often the body wants to just do that. Then you have to go into that meditation with the intention of holding the posture right from the get-go. Not like I'm going to notice dullness and then I'll work with it. You have to just start. And so the classic way is to keep your eyes open and keep the shoulders and chin up. And if you can do that and you have a lot of dullness, you'll find it's really difficult for the eyes not to close. The eyes just can feel like a ton of bricks. So you have the posture, your chest is open, your heart is out, you're nice and straight, your eyes are so this starts to happen. And that's the indication that now the hindrance wants to take you over. And then you don't let it do that until you work it through. So it's common hindrance, but actually I think it's one of the most difficult because its energy is sort of so very dull. You drink more coffee, you do that. That's okay. Um, as I always say in Zen meditation, they meditate with their eyes open. I think that's what I kind of remember. And they meditate looking at a wall. And they also meditate with a person that comes around and taps them on the shoulder if they're falling asleep. So they obviously figured out that this is a kind of very strong hindrance in meditation. So Theravada, we never did that. We're sort of choi choi. And if you want to have a good rest, go ahead, have a snooze kind of outfit. And the other, restlessness. Restlessness is, of course, a different product. And that's the opposite, where you try hard and you can't get any samadhi. You know you're there. And how you know you're there is the hour is so long. Usually with dullness, the hour goes by quickly. Oh, that was a good meditation. Whereas with the restlessness, it's the opposite. You keep looking at the clock. Wow, it's only 10 minutes. Still 35 minutes to go. And that's usually the best indication of restlessness, just the slowness of this whole experience. Or quite often physical pain, just discomfort, not pain that is harmful, just the discomfort of not being settled. So if that's happening, then you have to try less. You just have to say just nothing, just be a sack of potatoes. You don't have to put energy in. You need to relax more, nothing to do, nothing to become, something like that. Notice also, say, like we're sitting 45 minutes, which isn't long for us. Um, it's good for me because my knees get sore after pretty quick. But let's say you're used to sitting half an hour. You sit at home half an hour. Now we're sitting 45 minutes. Well, after half an hour, your meditation clock will ring. You say, time to finish. So you still have 15 more minutes. And when that mind state arises, you start to anticipate, when is this retreat? When is this retreat going to end? When is this sitting going to end? And you start to look at the clock, or you start to think you should look at the clock. Should I peek at the clock? And if you don't see the anticipation, you stay restless for that whole 15 minutes. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, but in developing awareness of mood of the mind, it's a very good insight to get that at some point your body or your mind tells you you've had enough and you'd like to leave. Thank you very much. And then you kind of look up, make sure that I'm not asleep. Because sometimes I have forgotten the bell. So sometimes the teacher forgets the bell. And so you start to anticipate. So if you notice anticipation, say, let's say it arises 30 minutes into the sitting, you notice anticipation. You say, oh, anticipation feels like this. And then you observe that. You observe the very restless desire to finish this thing off. And if you notice that, then you're back with the background. So this model of background foreground, I use it a lot. I find it very helpful. I find it very, very helpful. And I'm constantly sort of referencing that. So if I'm doing, like, I have a lovely balcony that I can do walking meditation on, and I have the river there. That's very lovely. And so then I'll just feel my body standing there. So the body is in awareness. The sound of the river is in awareness. So I try to create the perception of awareness as space and consciousness. So that when I'm walking from A to B and B to A, back and forth, this experience is in awareness. And then as thoughts arise, thoughts are in awareness, kind of reflecting that. So the idea here is that I'm not focusing down on my feet so much as opening my mind to the space of awareness. And then I can use my feet. My feet are contacting the ground. This is in awareness, but I'm not trying to hold an object. And that for me is a pretty important part of my own practice, that the way I like to do samadhi, I suppose, is opening the mind and allowing the space to be my reference point, the space of conscious awareness, and then localizing attention on feet or hands or whatever, as opposed to trying to focus on my feet so that no thought intrudes. I don't do that. Some people would try to do that. So both are okay. Both, but I can only say what I find helpful. So this idea, the meditation I started this morning, you like listen, like feel your hands, listen to sound. So there are those are two objective experiences, two sense doors. One sense door is sound changing, the other sense door tactile. Natural things, nothing unnatural. They're different, and I try to notice what is not different. They're changing. I try to notice what is not changing. And why that's important for me is because of and I'll talk about that maybe tonight, that idea there is the unconditioned and the uncreated. And that's a very important idea for me. And so my inquiry is, well, in this experience, what is unchanging? Now, in Buddhism, we tend to say everything is changing, but that's not the teaching. Everything is changing, or that which has the nature to arise has the nature to cease. Well, that's a different statement. If you say everything is changing, what is Nibbana about? That which has a nature to arise has a nature to cease is a different statement than everything. And we tend to say that everything is dukkha, everything is changing. But is that really what the teaching's pointing to? If everything was like that, then what's the point of it? Let's just do karaoke or whatever you want. But there is the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unborn, the unborn. What does that mean? What does the unborn mean? Well, if it doesn't begin and end, it can't be something that you will realize in the future. It has to be something that's here and now. In terms of how you make effort, like if I'm making effort now to see something that never changes in the future, then that cannot work. You see what I mean? So it has to be something about here and now, Pachatang, right? Here and now Dhamma, Akalika Dhamma. So what is here and now? Well, there's sound. Yeah, but that's anicca for sure. That's changing. Bodily feeling, it's there. So what is going on now that is not changing? And that's puru, knowing, awareness. And so our the teaching from I would say the forest tradition is to trust in awareness. Puru puto. Huh? Now this gets difficult when you have hindrances. So when hindrances come up, you cannot trust in awareness because you're not aware. You are absorbed into an object. As long as you are absorbed into an object such as dullness, you're not available for the background. You're in the foreground. I like to talk a lot. I think a lot. That's the way my mind is one that likes to inquire. So I see a word. Well, what does that word mean? What does that really mean? And then, so in terms of this, the language I like to use is say preoccupied and available. So if I am sleepy, then I'm preoccupied with thoughts. But if I just awaken and I listen, I'm there. But there's availability. I'm not lost in the sound. I'm not lost in the body. There's availability. And that's another way of referencing awareness, I think. You're just available, waiting for nothing. And then the silence of the background you begin to notice it. You begin to notice that deep silence. And then you have a thought about what happened last week. You're reborn into last week. And the mind thinks, right? And creates, and thinks and creates, which is not an immoral activity. But that thinking of creating, you think about it, you're no longer available for silence because you're in the foreground. You have been reborn in a thinking process. So rather than making rebirth something which is about another incarnation, we can make it about a psychological replaying, say, of a memory. So the attention goes into that memory, boop, and you start thinking. So what to do when you notice it? If you then try to get rid of it by thinking something else, you're still in the foreground. You're still in objective experience. But if you say, oh, this is a thought in awareness, then maybe you go back to the background. And if you keep doing that, not making the foreground a problem, keep doing that, the background, the silence of the mind becomes intuitively obvious, I would say. Well, that's a good way to put it. Intuitively obvious, because yeah, it's always there. Silence is always there. Awareness, that consciousness is always there. So then you make it, if you think about in a more difficult part, then your memory throws up a memory of that you hurt someone last week. You were angry and you yelled at someone at work, or they yelled at you. Now you have not only a memory, but you have an emotional sense of hurt with resentment or a sense of regret for having hurt. That's still an object, sure. It's still an object, comes up in memory, but now it's much more powerful. Your ego gets much, much, much more drawn into that. So if I hurt someone, I feel guilty. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. They're such a nice person. I always get caught up in that. That's rebirth, sure. Or the other way around. Um, they hurt me. Oh, I got betrayed. I was so good to them, and I was same thing. You're reborn again in the foreground. So then to actually notice remorse as an object, or resentment as an object, is actually more difficult because it has more power. But it's the same thing. Resentment feels like this. And then what the thing you get is you get a lot of tanha. Like, let's say if I Think about how like revenge and resentment works. You get hurt by someone and you're still a human being with a nervous system. They hurt you, they hurt your kids, they hurt whatever in some way. Then that memory comes up and there's the desire to not have that memory. And so to avenge them, to hurt them. That's a strong desire in humans. Now, to witness the desire to hurt as an object is actually very difficult. What if you do? What if you do? What if you do? Then that memory, the power of that memory starts to have less power because you've no longer believed in it as a self. You see it as an object. You've taken refuge in the background, not the foreground. So the revengeful memory comes up and wow. And you really want to say something and hurt someone. No, this is, and you go to the body. This is where bodily meditation is so very, very important because now this memory is not just a memory of a movie that you had. It's your own deep feeling. Then you go to the body and feel anger is here, fear is here, worry is here. You go to this part and you just patiently witness it. But all the time you're doing the same thing. You are establishing awareness of change. Now, and that awareness is the background. Now what happens is the anusaya, the latent tendency of anger and revenge and all of those different kinds of things, they begin to fall away. And this is what we mean by purification. Someone presses my anger button, I react, I sit down in meditation, I have the memory, the anger button gets pressed again by the memory. Now, if I'm mindful, I say anger feels like this, resentment feels like this, and then I have to wait. What ton? And I know for me, with Luangpor Cha, like he had no formula for getting through that. He says, what ton? You know, just look at it, bear witness to it. But the curious thing about that, or the good thing about that, it's actually a very liberating experience. It can be, not necessarily. If you're hurt in a very, very deep way, like in a war or something like that, then that's a whole complexity which is hard to deal with. But the principle is the same. Or fear. So if you're a very like if you worry or plan a lot, and you start to label planning and worrying, and when it comes up, you say, "Oh, planning feels like this, or worry feels like this." You'll see there's a lot of fear under that. There's a lot of fear. And rather than look at the fear, the mind goes into thinking. So you don't really know the fear anymore. You're just in thought. And the thought is ego. The thought is self. The thought is papancha. The thought is rebirth. It doesn't liberate the fear. But if the fear button gets pressed, the worry button gets pressed, and you can say to yourself, oh, planning or worry is like this, and go to the body. Go to the body, go to the body. Then the tendency towards fear manifest as worry, manifest as planning, that tendency is now witnessed and it ceases. So this is the idea of upadana. Upadana is attachment, but upadana means fuel. It's a really good word. And so when my fear button gets pressed, my worry button gets pressed, the anusaya, the tendency to thinking that way, relating that way, comes up. I witness it, and witnessing is non-attachment. The witnessing isn't like, it's not that stuff doesn't come up. Stuff does come up because we're not, we're human beings. We have the stuff coming up. But by witnessing it and letting it be as it is, that's non-attachment and non-fuel. I'm not putting more fuel on it. And if you don't put more fuel on it, it still burns. Think about like resentment. Someone's hurt you, hurt your child or whatever. That's a real burning. That's a very, very powerful thing. And you witness it, so that the burning begins to cool down. begins to cool down if you witness it in the body. And then your tendency to be vulnerable with that kind of anusaya, that falls away. You have more and more upekkha. So upekkha quite often comes from feeling hurt or feeling fearful or feeling desirous of something. So the model of foreground and background for me is kind of a very simple way to point to that. Know the background, whatever the foreground is, see if you can witness it as change, as anicca, rather than always having to change the foreground. You can change the foreground, sure. You can put good things in, but not out of repression. So when we are calm, when there's no material coming up, we start to put into the foreground the Brahma Viharas as much as we can. May you be well. May you be well. May I be well. Gratitude. We just keep putting that into the mind because the mind has some space. You can put things into it. But you don't always have to be doing something. You can like just, you can learn how just to be aware. Notice the way things are. So that's what I suggest the cup of coffee practice is, or the cup of tea, or the whatever you like, just to kind of, like after a meal, just sit and observe. Learn to, is it Pakchong? Is that how you say? Learn to rest the mind. Chitta vivek, a vacation of the heart. Where you actually rest the mind, and just by being and not being. These are very good things. Okay, so in terms of the structure of the retreat, again, we have like a good chunk in the afternoon, a good chunk after breakfast, and try to really use that, fill in that whole time with formal practice. And so you can do whatever posture you like. But just to mention about Yoga Nidra, Yoga Nidra, I think I've described it all, but maybe some people online haven't heard how I talk about that. So Yoga Nidra is lying down meditation. I usually do it in corpse posture. So I establish corpse posture. I put a pillow under my knees. Very important. Very important. Put a pillow on your knees because that will protect the small of the back. You get a lot of stress in the small of the back if your legs are flat. I get my head set up so it's neither too far in, too far up. I lay the posture out on a comfortable surface, and I do it like you would do a formal posture. When you sit down in cross-legged meditation, usually you know how you want to get yourself set up. You know how you like your cushion, and you have a sense in your mind, this is meditation now. In the same way, Yoga Nidra is not really meant for falling asleep. Because if you're using meditation for falling asleep, then you're probably falling asleep. It's probably not a good idea. So you're not trying to pacify the mind into some kind of dullness. You're trying to actually sustain the awake mind in a posture which is comfortable. So for those of us who are over a certain age, holding the body up on the floor becomes increasingly difficult. If your knees hurt, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, if you have Lyme's disease, so many other things that we can get. So you lay the posture out, and then you kind of make a decision to do this practice for a period of time, maybe 45 minutes in the same way. 45 minutes, you set your clock. And then I would suggest, oh yeah, the one instruction is very helpful. You make your posture comfortable, and then you adjust it 10%. In the instruction, I first learned this. This is such a helpful one. You adjust your posture 10% to be more comfortable, and then you make the adhitthana to not move. And that really helps, actually, because then what happens is, the body, it itches, you want to scratch it, you want to change, you don't move. You don't move, because that's just the restlessness of the body. So when you then make this decision not to move, then you become really much more aware of the body as an object. And then I would suggest using that body meditation that I did this morning, where you bring it to a sense of the body as an object in awareness, just in awareness. And then you get a sense of awareness being spacious, but you can experiment with it. What about falling asleep? Well, most people usually begin with falling asleep. Um, Snoring is good because snoring actually can wake you up. Your own snoring can wake you up, you know. It works like that. That's works like that. I would say, for those of you who are over 22 years old, it's a worthwhile posture to develop, especially if you've got, like, I have my issues with my knees and so on. And then you try to alternate, you do like sitting, walking, lying down, sitting, walking, lying down, or some combination thereof. Uh, so I think it's a worthwhile posture to develop. Yeah. So maybe I'll just go through that meditation again. And then in the afternoon, if you want to experiment with it, you can. So stretch your legs a bit and I'll walk through that. So take a posture that's comfortable. Again, if you think you might be sleepy, then you are sleepy. And keep your eyes open and use your posture as the awakening factor, a strong posture. I'll use the same pattern. Listen to sound. Let the sound come to you. Let the sound just manifest. Now, don't make any statement about the sound, no description, just pure sound. Listening. In this hall, we have the air conditioning, so notice the changing nature of sound. And then what is unchanging? Background awareness. Feel the tactile sensations in your hands. Let them come into consciousness, receptive awareness. Listen to sound and feel the hands. Two different sensation experiences changing, and what is unchanging, not different. Uh, Background, knowing, consciousness, awareness. Now be that awareness, welcoming all conditions, attaching to none. So you establish a very kind of open, receptive awareness. Relaxed, open. And then, like, notice in this kind of way of doing things, you're not seeking any experience. It's not a question of tanha. So this experience is it is as it is. Mind just open, awake. And notice also that hopefully you're not trying to get rid of anything. You're not trying to get rid of thoughts, get rid of pain. You're just noticing discomfort, thought as objects in awareness. So this is the standard you always want to return to. Awake, present knowing. And then we can localize our attention, choose the head, choose the mouth. Bring attention to the mouth, that whole area. Allow the sensations in the mouth to become conscious. So there's no straining to find some experience, but there is a kind of localization at the mouth. Feel the ears, the outer structures of the ears, and inside the eardrums. Each time then we localize attention, there's a sense of collectedness and the stillness of awareness. The nose, bridge, and nostrils. If you're used to one pointed attention at the end of the nose, that's not quite what we're doing. It's just allowing the feelings of the nose to become conscious. Don't squeeze your eyes. Feel the eyes. The temples. Top of the head. Back of the head. And the whole head. The whole head is a mass of vibrations, sensations, changing in awareness. Feel the neck. And the shoulders, both shoulders. Feel both arms. The torso, upper chest, the chest, front of the body, upper back, rib cage, lungs, heart. Abdominal area, front, stomach, intestines, lower spine. That whole area in awareness. You let go of thinking, come to the present moment. Pelvic area, pelvic bones. Organs of the pelvic area. Hips, both hips. Go down both thighs, knees, lower leg, down to the feet. Both legs from hip to feet. In awareness. This experience is in awareness. Feel the whole body. Now, it's not a concept, but what is whole body as an experience? It's not a fixed thing, is it? Different thing, different sensations changing. Whole body awareness. And what is unchanging? Background, space, awareness, conscious knowing. Foreground, body feeling. Taking place in awareness. Be that awareness. So then you can just stay in that spacious awareness, observe change. But if you get caught up with too much thinking, you can then use the breath in the same way. So, for instance, go to the breathing, feel an in-breath, taking place in awareness. Stay with the background. An in-breath, an out-breath, in awareness. Stay with the background. One whole breath cycle, in and out. Stay with the background. Now, if you get sleepy and dull, make the breath longer, deeper. Use the breath to energize. But if not, just be the witness, be awareness, knowing change. If you want to use the breath, know the changing nature of in-breath, out-breath.